Hello everyone, welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to build the best gaming PC on the planet. Or close enough for me anyway. This graphics card is ridiculous, and nobody should buy it. We also have the MSI Mag X870 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. Pairing that with DDR5 from G.skill, Trident Z5 Neo RGB. This is the low latency variant. Also have, of course, the 9800 X3D from AMD. We have two Kingston Fury Renegade G5 SSDs. I also have a water block that I'll be integrating into my old cooling system. And a contact frame from Thermal Grizzly. So let's start building. Here we have our motherboard. Unboxed it along with my CPU, the contact frame, and my drive. I'm only going to install one for now until I get Windows installed. And then we have our RAM as well. On the right, I've pre-cleaned my water block with alcohol. I have the hardware for it. I have this little thing that came with the contact frame to take off the old socket. And I'm going to undo the socket so it doesn't spring up. I removed a couple brackets here at the bottom and top, and I can go ahead and unscrew all of these. This is pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward for a minute while I unscrew all of these. There we go, have the old motherboard socket removed, and I'm going to keep that with my motherboard box, just in case I need it for an RMA or something like that. You also want to make sure you take a look inside of your socket and make sure it looks good. So we have here the AMD Ryzen 9800 X3D. Take a look at the bottom, make sure it looks good as well. It's got a little notch on the top and bottom, so it's very hard to screw this up. Go ahead and set that in place. Next, I have a little gasket here. It has a little notch on one side. Corresponds to the notch in the contact frame. So you just have to make sure you line those two up. Go ahead and put the gasket down on the CPU here, tuck it in. And then once I flip over the contact frame, it'll line up. Just go ahead and push gently down. Try to get that to sit in place. And I'll go ahead and grab the screws for it. Put them in place, and then we'll screw them all in. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward again. I'm going to start screwing them in an X pattern, and the goal is to try to screw this in evenly on the way down. And I'm going to do that pretty much anytime I screw anything in that has 4 screws on it. Next, we have this hardware. Came with the water block. It goes where the 2 brackets I uninstalled were. Just go ahead and put all these in. They're just going to be hand tight. No need to really tighten them more than that. Next, I have thermal paste here from Thermal Grizzly. This is the Cryonaut version. And I'm just going to squeeze it out and spread it across the CPU. And I'll make sure I have the entire top covered before I'm done. I can go back and spot treat any spots I miss. But the goal here is to just have a nice thin layer of thermal paste covering the entire IHS. Little spot treat in this corner, little spot treat up top, and I think I'm good to go. And we can put in our water block. 2 pieces of hardware on the sides here, just slide into the side. It's not that complicated. And then you can go ahead and press it down on the hardware we already installed. And I'm just going to push it down a little bit. And then we can install our thumb screws. These are pretty straightforward, same thing, just put them all in and then start tightening them in an X pattern. So we'll go ahead and fast forward. And I'm going to do that nice and gently, make sure everything gets screwed in even on the way in. After that, we can install our drive, or our first one anyway. Undo this latch here. I've used this motherboard before, but there will be a plastic film here you gotta remove, and there will be another one right here you have to remove, but I've already done that. Install the drive like so. Click it down, it's a little quick release thing they have on this board. And then reinstall your heatsink. There you go. Motherboard is now mostly prepared. The last thing we have to do here is the RAM. You can see here I have my plastic tabs folded down on each side here. There's a diagram here that tells you which ones to use first. And there's a little notch here that corresponds to a notch in the motherboard. Slide it on in, making sure you line up the notch. Push it on down, your motherboard will flex a little bit, but that's fine. Same thing for the second stick. Line up the notch again. Press it on down. And then make sure all of your tabs have folded into place. And there, motherboard's ready to put into your case. For the case itself, I've been using this case for years. This has all been pre-installed. I have 4 fans here, 4 fans here, and I have enough wiring and a fan hub to provide me with 11 fan hookups. From the power supply, I have everything wired that I'm going to need, like this 24-pin motherboard cable, these 2 CPU wires. I have here a GPU cable, ATX 3.0. My fan hub is wired. I have 3 fan leads wired at the bottom. And then my fan hub is plugged in to SATA power here. Tuck that back in. Also for the case, I have my USB-C here, wired where it's going to need to go. I have 2 of these USB 3.2s, I believe they are. They're wired where they need to go. I have here an RGB cable I'm probably not going to use, so I'll just tuck that to the side. I'll think about using it. I have my power switch wire here, which usually goes to this bottom corner of the motherboard. On the right side, I have 2 more cables. I have here a fan hub cable. This is coming directly from my fan hub, and whichever fan is plugged into slot 1 will control the speed and report back. Last cable here is my case audio for the front panel. And that's it. Last thing I should mention for the power supply is that I did have to use this overclocking key, specifically with this GPU. I had a 4090 Rogue Strix and it never needed this piece at all, but without this little thing, my GPU would shut down my computer with the ASUS Astral LC only. Having everything wired, I can put the motherboard into the case, grab it by the heatsink here and just put it in like so. You may also have to install an I/O shield in the back, but this motherboard doesn't need one. Then you can go ahead and screw in your 9 motherboard screws that hold it in place, which is pretty straightforward. After that, you can just plug everything in. USB-C here for my case front panel. My USB 3.2s, also for the case front panel. I have here my power switch. Make sure you look up which pins to use for this if you're not sure. You'll be able to find it in your motherboard manual. Fan lead here, this one's for the fan that's in the back of the case. And I am using a headlamp here because it's hard to see. Case front audio, missing 1 pin, plugs in down there. And this is from my fan hub. It will just plug into any of the fan headers here. CPU cables up top, these can be tricky, especially if you install your top case fans before you try to do this. But I won't have any of those in this build. There we go. Last cable here is an RGB cable with an adapter for my water block, but I plugged it in and tried it, and it didn't seem to work with the adapter, so I just won't be using it. I also have this white cap on my 24-pin cable, and it will run my pump once I hook up my loop. Last connector down here is a PCI Express connector. I'm not really sure why it needs this, but I'll plug it in anyway. I have my 2 fan leads here, and I have 1 extra one in this bottom corner, and those will be for my 3 fans at the bottom. GPU cable here, and everything else is good to go. At this point, you could probably install an air cooler, but for me, I already have the parts for custom loop, so that's what we're gonna do. It's pretty straightforward. I have 3 fans at the bottom. These are all gonna be intakes. And hooking up my fans here. and installing the bracket that came with the case after I hook up all of my fans. I also have to tuck my connectors into the sides here, otherwise it won't sit into place properly. And I could redo it to hide my wires a little bit better, which I will do. Next, for the pump, just gotta wire all of my wires to the back of the case. And then once I have that completed, I can grab my extra radiator, which is way overkill for the amount of heat that's going to be coming out of the CPU. But in the words of Hannibal Smith, overkill is underrated. I have 2 fan screws holding each of the fans in, and then I have 2 more screws holding the radiator to those fans. Now I can get started hooking up my loop. Gonna need to screw in the pump. It has a bracket attached to it that will install to the radiator. I can hook up this one hose. And I also recommend priming your hoses by putting bits onto them first and then putting them into your computer later. Otherwise, they're very difficult to get onto the bits sometimes if they're brand new hoses. Screw in my pump here. I'm only going to use 3 screws because the bottom one in the back is hard to get to. And it's not going to hurt anything. I'm not shipping it anywhere, so. Pump is installed. I have 1 tube connecting my radiators together so far. 1 more tube that's lined up to the pump intake. And this will be the output. I accidentally put the wrong fitting in here. Normally that doesn't matter, but I have 2 different kinds. Mainly because I tried to order more and they were out of the ones I already had. Couple fittings into the water block. And as you can see, it's leaking water because I've used this loop before. Here's where I realized I put the wrong fitting in place. It actually needs to go over here. Leftover juice from my last install. But there we go, pump intake is all set. Radiators are connected together too. All that's left is to go from the output to the intake on the water block, and then from the output on the water block to my radiator. And there you have it. Nice custom loop. It's cooling only the CPU, and the GPU has its own liquid cooling. At this point, if you're air cooling, you could install your air cooler, and I would recommend installing Windows as well. If you're using the CPU, you don't need a GPU to turn on your computer. But for me, I'm going to plug in my pump. Plug in my power supply. Make sure the power supply is off for now, so I don't run my pump dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill it up. I'm using a premix from EKWB. Pour in some liquid. This bottle's almost empty. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the power supply. But I'm going to have to turn it back off because I'm going to have to put more liquid in. Use the last of this bottle. Go ahead and open this one. Fill it on up. Then we'll turn it on again and I'll fill it up as it runs. And then I can just let it sit for a good long time. You'll notice a bunch of air go into the tube. But now it's time to just wait until all that disappears. So sped this up 10,000%. We're going to let this run for at least 30 minutes. And you'll notice that the water becomes way less cloudy as the air comes out. Once you're done bleeding your loop, all that's left to do is plug it in, install the GPU, and you're good to go. So here I have my GPU. I'm just struggling trying to figure out how to hook it up without bending the hoses too much. Give me a second to orient it right. Okay. install the GPU like so. There's a little button that is a quick release on the motherboard right here that will lock it in place. And then I can install the screws for it. Triple fan radiator this GPU comes attached to. I have room for that up top. My theory here is that I want to exhaust all the heat from the GPU first, because it's about 400 watts worth at minimum, up to 600 watts worth. And I don't want that sitting in my case. This cable is the one that usually lights on fire for people, so make sure that's plugged in all the way. And there you go. I have a computer. All I have to do is plug in my motherboard cable here. And I'm done. I can go ahead and install Windows if I haven't already. And then after I install Windows, I go back into the BIOS and make sure I have my overclock set up. So for overclocking, CPU, AMD overclocking, Precision Boost Overdrive, I have it set to Thermal Point 85. I did try manual overclocks, but I achieved better results just using this, so I'm going to use that. And I have AMD Expo turned on, so my RAM is running at 6,000 megatransfers, and it is CL26. I'll be pairing my computer with the monitor from Alienware, which is a QD OLED 3225QF, and I wouldn't buy this much hardware without getting a UPS backup. Don't forget to plug in your Wi-Fi antenna. And I'm done. That's it, guys. I got games to play, so I'm gonna get out of here. I think I'll see you guys out in the battlefield. Later, guys. Thanks for watching.